It's beyond due. It's time to give
Yeah,
you guys our first Dynasty wide receiver ranking video of the 2024 year.
that's right.
Lots has changed, and we're going into our top 50 rankings. We're doing the most we can for you
That's a
guys.
lot.
In return, do us a favor and just smash that like button. Subscribe if you like Dynasty content. But Aki, just quickly, I want you to tell me who was the most disappointing receiver for you in 2023.
Yeah, no question, Elijah Moore, someone that I believed in. I was really bullish on
tough.
coming into this year. Just didn't pan out the way I was hoping and expecting. It was unfortunate.
Yeah, probably Treylon Burks for me. That's rest in peace.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
rest in peace for Trigger Dre. Oh man, that is not okay. Like Zach said, top 50 wide receivers. Obviously, we're gonna go in depth, probably in the upper tiers. So definitely stay tuned. But Zach, take us through your tier one. I think there could be some new changes potentially.
Yeah,
in
tier one. I mean, there is 3 players in tier one, and I don't care what order you have them in, right? Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb,
Yeah.
Jamar Chase.
Mm-hmm.
And I would currently have CeeDee Lamb as my wide receiver 2. And that's just because he's put up a points per game output that we haven't ever seen with the likes of a Jamar Chase. I know Jamar Chase has Joe Burrow connected to him, but a 23.7 PPR points per game year, 181 targets, second in receiving yards, right behind Tyreek Hill. I mean, he absolutely balled out, finished as the wide receiver 1. I mean, maybe he should, honestly, like, I don't care what order you have these 3, but maybe CD should be at the top. Maybe he should. He's connected to Dak long term. We have no idea who Jefferson's quarterback is going to be.
That's the thing.
And Chase hasn't produced the way CD has anyway.
Yeah. And honestly, that is
Any order.
Yeah, any order. And that is the main concern when you think of, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Dak Prescott. I look at those quarterbacks. It doesn't really matter the order. I'm happy to go any order, but wouldn't be surprised if Jamar Chase is 1 or CeeDee Lamb's 1 and Justin Jefferson's 3 or Justin Jefferson's 2. I think a lot of people are in the community is like, no, Justin Jefferson, he should be 1. I don't see why that's the case. In my personal opinion,
He's just his start to his career. We've never seen it.
It's been phenomenal, no question about it. But yeah, look,
I think you can make a
agree.
case that CD is the number 1.
Mm-hmm.
If Kirk comes back on a deal and they draft someone we like, you could put Jefferson back at 1.
Yeah.
I mean, people will say Chase should be 1 because he's got Joe Burrow throwing him the ball.
Yeah.
Again, doesn't matter where you have these guys ranked. Just understand they're all God tier receivers. You can draft them in the first round of a Superflex startup, and they're worthy of it, right? I mean, do you agree?
No, completely agree. I think they're worthy of it. All these guys should be ranked in the top 3, however way you want to put it. I don't think there's a wrong answer going into the 2024 season. Take us to your tier 2.
All right, tier 2. We'll have Amon-Ra St. Brown as the first name here, the wide receiver 3 on the season, averaging
phenomenal.
over 20 points per game. He balled out, continuing to prove haters wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I have said on this channel many times, because you guys know we were big Puka Nacua guys. I'll have Puka Nacua next, my wide receiver 5. We were big on him. He was our favorite sleeper last year.
Yeah,
now, of course, we
absolutely.
weren't drafting him in the first round. We got him in the 3rd and 4th round everywhere.
Crazy.
But Puka Nacua, to me, the people who aren't in on him, it reminds me of the people who weren't in on Amon-Ra St. Brown. He wasn't a first-round pick. He's not the caliber of talent. I remember in week 11 or so, someone tweeted out from the Dynasty community and said, is Puka Nacua a top 12 Dynasty wide receiver? And the responses were hilarious. People were like, absolutely not. He never was. He wasn't even close. Is he even top 24? It's like, because of this 5th round label, there's no respect on Puka Nacua. I'm going to put some respect on him. My wide receiver 5 at this moment.
Sure.
No one in the history of the NFL has ever had a better rookie season than Puka Nacua. And clearly he credited benefited rather from some great quarterback play from Matthew Stafford. There's no reason to believe Matthew Stafford is done. He played great ball this year. This team made the playoffs. And Puka Nacua is clearly the number 1 wide receiver. Even when Cooper Kupp has been healthy, Puka's been the guy. I think he's the guy moving forward. I also have Garrett Wilson in this tier and A.J. Brown. And for a while there, I actually had Garrett Wilson over Puka. It just took me a couple weeks to be like, you know what? I mean, if Garrett Wilson ever did what Puka Nacua just did, we would have him in tier 1, So, I'm trying to put some respect on Puka. But that's the tier 2 for me. I don't know if you have anything you would disagree on or anything there.
I definitely don't disagree. I do have Puka in my top 8. He's currently my wide receiver 7 in my rankings.
Okay. So you have who ahead?
I have Garrett Wilson ahead.
And AJ.
I have Garrett Wilson and AJ Brown ahead of him. Yes, correct. The reason why, and I think it could be the same conversation when you think of what we just had about Justin Jefferson. What is a long-term longevity with someone like Puka in the quarterback position? The same could be said with Garrett Wilson, with Aaron Rodgers. And we haven't even seen how.
Same could be said for AJ Brown. No, I'm just joking. I know I'm going
to. A lot of people have been going crazy about Jalen Hurts. But I think when I think of Matthew Stafford and how long does he truly have, I can say confidently a year. But I can say Garrett Wilson confidently with Aaron Rodgers 2 years. And that's obviously
a year too, but I get it.
Anything can happen when it comes down to these guys and their quarterback play. Yeah. Now, I think a lot of people in the fantasy community are probably going to comment and say, what happens if Puka Nacua doesn't have a sustainable quarterback? Because we've seen Garrett Wilson with Zach Wilson. We've seen him with, if I'm not mistaken, Joe Flacco. All these other quarterbacks and still produce. He wasn't the top 5, top 8 wide receiver, but the talent is there. Just imagine with the quarterback. And I think a lot of people are questioning Puka with a questionable quarterback after Matthew Stafford leaves.
I'm glad you talked about that because you said the talent is there. I found on Twitter oftentimes when people were arguing me against Puka Nacua, they would say something like they would talk about his draft capital. And I would say, well, where would you draft him if we redid the 2023 draft? Where would he go? For me, he would be a locked and loaded top 10, top 15 pick in the NFL draft. You know what I mean? Just like Garrett Wilson was. I think it's safe to say that the NFL missed on Puka Nacua. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
So I get where you're coming from because we're hyping up Garrett because he's talented.
Yeah.
Puka Nacua no one's ever done that. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
So yeah, I get it from both sides though.
Yeah, I see the community definitely.
That's what she said.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hey, shout out to her. I see the community going, having both conversations. And I think, if you're one of those people questioning, listen to what Zach said. Go back and rewatch it, what he literally just said, because there's some value there. So Puka Nacua, your wide receiver 5 in your tier 2. Take us to your tier 3.
Yeah, I don't think we should gloss over AJ. I'll just quickly say, great year, wide receiver 5. And, I'm not concerned about him. It's just he is older. He's had those history with those knee issues. And I'm not saying, again, like, focus on the tiers rather than exactly where people are placed, I'd say. Into tier 3. This might be another shock for people, but I have been racking my brain trying to understand the pure disrespect of this player in the Dynasty community. DJ Moore. This is where I have DJ Moore.
Talk it up.
Yes, my wide receiver 8 in my Dynasty rankings. I cannot for the life of me understand why some people don't have him in their top 15. Why some people have him around wide receiver 20. I think in the community, he's wide receiver 15 to 20, somewhere around there, depending on what website you're using with community rankings.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't understand. DJ Moore just had a hell of a year, and he didn't have Justin Fields the entire season, by the way. He finished as the wide receiver 6, averaging about 17 points per game. And if you look at the splits this year specifically with and without Justin Fields, it's night and day. With Justin Fields, he's averaging over 19 points per game. Without Justin Fields, around 10 points per game. And you might be saying, but Zach, Justin Fields probably isn't on this team anymore if you feel that way.
Exactly.
Great. Caleb Williams is joining the team. It doesn't get much worse. So I don't understand the disrespect. It's not like he's 30 years old. I mean, he's a young player. He's in the prime of his career. I also have Tyreek Hill here. Who looks incredible, and Chris Olave in this tier. But again, I'm just advocating for DJ there. I don't get it. I don't understand. Maybe he's a great buy low right now. I just bought him in one of our Dynasty leagues as well for, I think it was like the 107 in this year's draft, the 108. So,
yeah.
I mean, you can go buy him. I don't get it. His situation can't get worse.
Exactly.
And even if they draft Marvin Harrison Jr., I mean, that's one hell of a wide receiver room.
It is. And I think that's where a lot of people are scared and skeptical, because the way Justin Fields kind of played in the second half of the season, even though he didn't win against Green Bay in Week 18, he still shows some fight. He still shows some grit and how he can lead a team to win in all, I would say, 4 out of the 5 games, or 3 out of the 5 games he played in the last weeks of the season. DJ Moore, one of my guys coming in, somebody that I really love, just purely based off Justin Fields and that production that we all saw in this year. Wide receiver 9 on a points per game basis, which is still top 10. Like you said, wide receiver 6 in the fantasy finish. He is something special. And look,
this
question.
This is what we've been waiting for him to become forever.
Exactly.
He finally became it.
And no question that he probably will fall a little bit if Marlon Harrison Jr. is going to get drafted to this team. But I don't think he falls outside the top 20 if Marlon Harrison Jr. is drafted. So I completely agree. I love DJ Moore. He's also a top 10 guy. Tyreek Hill also played really well. Wide receiver 2, just over 23.5 points. And Chris Olave, a little bit of an up and down season, unfortunately. Wide receiver 16, a lot of injuries, a lot of inconsistencies at quarterback. We are going to be seeing a new offensive coordinator being with the Saints, so that's really going to boost his. At least you hope it's going to boost his fantasy points.
I will say that I feel like Chris Olave, of anyone I've named so far, I am not really concerned about his talent, but his situation really concerns me because it feels like he's locked in to a tough situation for a while. And I would say any of the players I'm about to talk about in tier 4, I would be so comfortable tearing down off of Olave to these names and getting something in return. But he's a tough one to digest right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, once again, Derek Carr, I think, is the main problem. But hopefully with the new offensive coordinator, we can see a little bit more consistency with Derek Carr. And we've seen Chris Olave play with multiple different quarterbacks as well. So even if he is not the quarterback going into 2023, maybe something good can happen going into 2024, excuse me. We can hopefully find something else here. Okay, well, that is top 12-ish? Was it 8, 9, 10, 11?
No, that's top 10.
Top 10? Right? Okay, top 10 there. So take us to your next tier 4.
Well, just before we go into tier 4, I want to quickly let everyone know about some exciting stuff you and I have been working on. If you want to support the channel, and also if you want to dive into the 2024 rookie class in an even deeper, way, we are releasing version 2 of our 2024 rookie report on February 1st. Going to have more players in there that you guys can dive into, more features. We're very excited about it. Sign up using the promo code LAND to the Flock Fantasy website. Choose the Mother Flocker tier. You're going to have access to V1 and V2 when it comes out February 1st, as well as a Dynasty team review on a live stream. All the things you see on your screen here, you'll have access to. So make sure you sign up with the promo code LAND to support the show. Check out the pinned comment if you want a direct link. But yeah, we'll get into tier 4 here. I love these players in tier 4.
Okay.
I feel so good about rostering them. And you can rank them any particular way that you'd like to. I'm not really concerned about exactly how you rank them, but Nico Collins, my wide receiver 11. Yes, Nico Collins ends up a top 12 wide receiver in my Dynasty rankings.
Love it.
I think he's the truth. Missed 2 games this year, still finished as the wide receiver 12, averaging over 17 points per game. He averaged more than Jamar Chase this year, more than Devontae Adams, and name a receiver. He was very good compared to most receivers in fantasy this year.
Right.
He's a young player. He broke out. He's attached to CJ Stroud. I believe he's answered the questions of, will the Texans invest into a receiver in the first round this year? I don't think they will. Maybe they do. Maybe we're wrong.
Maybe.
But I think they have enough with what they've already got, and I think he's proven that. Okay. Now, a little bit of controversy here, Padaki. Rashee Rice, a top 12 ranked wide receiver for me in Dynasty. I'm happy to answer any questions you have on that. Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, Michael Pittman Jr., and Tank Dell. That is my tier 4.
Okay.
What do we want to talk about the most? What questions might arise, I guess, from this tier?
Well, let's talk about what you kind of hinted, Rashee Rice. I don't have him in my top 12. I do have him as a top 20 wide receiver. And my main concern is if they bring in another wide receiver, which we had multiple conversations about this on our live streams, so definitely come and join us on our live streams when we do Dynasty Startup mock drafts, because we kind of go a lot in depth. But Rashee Rice, my concern is if they bring in somebody which is really hard to envision because of their draft capital, but if they bring in somebody that we believe could be just a little bit better than Rashee Rice, I think that takes away from his value. Now, he did have a phenomenal second half of the season where he really solidified himself with Patrick Mahomes, but is he more talented than a Troy Franklin, than a Brian Thomas if he does fall, which I doubt he does. But hypothetically, the NFL doesn't view him that way. Do you get what I'm saying? What if somebody that we love so much falls into a place like the Kansas City Chiefs and takes away from Rashee Rice? Because I think he can be overtaken. Even if what if in free agency they get a T. Higgins, a Michael Pittman who's in the same tier? If I'm not mistaken, Brandon Ayuk is also going to be a free agent going into this year. That can take away from Rashee Rice, which is my concern because we know the Chiefs need another wide receiver, another weapon. So that's why I'm a little bit concerned with Rashee Rice going into 2024.
Rashee Rice is the trap everyone fell for since Tyreek left, turned good. For years, we were in rookie drafts and we're like, what if this is Patrick Mahomes' favorite weapon? What if Sky Moore? What if, MVS? What if enter wide receiver Juju? What if this is Patrick Mahomes' favorite weapon? It has happened with Rashee Rice. You are connected to what I would say is one of the best quarterbacks to ever play this game that we love. And you have become the number one option on an offense that has Travis Kelce. I mean, from weeks 11 onwards, Rashee Rice became a full-time player. He wasn't a full-time player before that. He became a full-time player in an Andy Reid offense where rookie receivers are drowning in information. He became a full-time player. He led this team in receptions and receiving yards, I believe in touchdowns, all while Travis Kelce had career lows since 2016 when he broke out. The transition has already happened. Rashee Rice is the number one on this offense. And I think some people are potentially missing that. From week 11 onwards, when he became a full-time player, he averaged 17 points per game. He averaged more points per game than Mike Evans, Michael Pittman, Brandon Ayuk, Devonta Smith, DK Metcalf, Tank Dell when Tank Dell was healthy, Chris Olave, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, Chris Godwin, George Pickens, Jamar Chase. He averaged more points per game than all of those players. And again, it goes back to Puka Nacua. The question is always, what if someone comes in? What if they bring another? What if this happens? Well, if we redid the 2023 NFL draft, do you think Rashee Rice gets out of the first round? No. What about Tank Dell? No. So at some point, draft capital is important historically, but a player outperforms their draft capital, and we can all hold our hands up and say, hey, we were wrong. This player is actually really good. We have been dreaming of who is Patrick Mahomes' future weapon, and I think some people might have missed it because from week 11 onwards, Rashee Rice blossomed into that player. And again, he's like, rookie receivers for the Chiefs and for Andy Reid typically do not perform like this. It is very special what he's doing. He's just on the cusp of what he could become. And I would personally argue that they need someone. They need another player to complement Rashee. And that's okay because Travis Kelce is not the same player. They need another player. And it's okay because you've got this ridiculous efficient quarterback that's throwing you the ball. You only need 7 targets a game anyway. So yeah, I mean, my personal stance is he's already proven it. He's a good player. When someone shows you that they're a good player, believe them, right? Oftentimes we're caught up in what talented college players could be. What about the guys who outperform their draft capital? It's like, well, this is who I am. And I think that's Rashee Rice. I think that's Tank Dell. I think that's Puka Nacua this year.
Okay. I think for me, the main difference, like for example, if we were comparing Puka and Rashee Rice, is that Puka has already beat out the competition in Cooper Kupp, where Rashee Rice, somebody else could come in and beat him out.
Rashee Rice has already beat out Travis Kelce, one of the best tight ends this league has ever seen.
Look, that's a good point because I was thinking in the wide receiver room because I think if Travis Kelce leaves and they bring in somebody, once again, maybe I'm a little bit shaky. I'm not off him as a talent, just more of like I don't think his points per game type of finish will probably be there, and maybe it was not even that high. It was 13.3 for the season. Maybe it can rise, or maybe it just stays in that 13.3 type of range there. Really quickly, since I know we kind of spoken a lot, one guy I do want to hint on here or talk about is Tank Dell. Tank Dell, who I love, he is actually in my top 10. I actually have Tank Dell above Nico Collins. I think if we would have seen a full season of Tank Dell like we saw of Nico Collins, maybe we would have seen 2 top 12 wide receivers from CJ Stroud.
Probably.
And I think a lot of people have maybe discounted him because of the injuries. I did bring a video about Tank Dell and how, once again, the numbers aren't perfect, but if you put him on pace in that second half of the season from weeks 8 to 12 or 8 to 13 right before he got 8 to 12, excuse me. He was like the wide receiver 5. He would have been on pace for that finish. Once again, not perfect, but the fact that he was getting those type of numbers was phenomenal. Finished wide receiver 1, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 12, wide receiver 15. The pace was there for him. So I think he is also deserving to be in the top 12 there with Nico Collins. They're actually back to back in my rankings.
I have no problem with that. It's funny though, because Tank Delwally's a rookie is the same age as Nico Collins.
It's crazy.
And they both were drafted the same place. So like it's hard to see Nico not being a part of this team's future, but I could understand it in the sense of like, okay, Nico Collins moves on, Tank Dell's on the rookie contract. I could see that.
Yeah.
All right. I guess it's like, because it's funny because we've talked about this even in the 2024 class. We don't judge rookies, wide receivers in our scouting process based off size at all. We just don't do that.
No.
That's because of the Zay Flowers of the world, the Tank Dells of the world. There are more important aspects. So anyway, I'm just saying I agree with you, but at the end of the day, I think I prefer the big X guy. You know?
No, I hear you. I get you.
So I hear it though.
I get you. All right, let's take us through your tier 5 then.
All right, tier 5. I would say, honestly, dude, like this tier more than any tier, I do not care about the order of the players. I more care about that they are all in the same tier for me personally.
Okay.
So Zay Flowers would be here. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jordan Addison, DK Metcalf, T. Higgins, Drake London, Devonta Smith. Again, put Devonta Smith at the top of this tier if you want. I don't care. Like I said, I don't care about the order. I think these players are all in that same tier for me. I can see similar outcomes. Some have proven it and put up big production. Others, I am projecting. For example, Jackson Smith and Jigba, who didn't have exactly the year that we wanted him to, but head coach is moving on. You know, does that mean that this team is going to move on from Tyler Lockett? They have an out. He's got so much money on his contract. The peripherals, of his rookie season are pretty decent. His target separation was top 7 in the NFL. He was getting open at a rapid rate. He was just on a team that wasn't throwing the ball well or often. And you could have DK over Jason. I don't care. Again, you could have Jason at the end of this tier. You could have Drake London at the very. If Kirk Cousins goes to Atlanta, Drake London's probably in tier 4, right? Easily. So
100%.
All I'm saying is the order doesn't matter to me. I just think all these guys are. I view similar value moving forward. And as far as Devonta Smith goes, I think a lot of people might have him higher than I have him.
Okay.
But I own Devonta Smith in a lot of leagues this year, not in Dynasty, but redraft specifically. And if the Devonta Smith people out there can be honest, how often were you confident in starting Devonta Smith this year? Right. It was honestly difficult. I was so frustrated. There wasn't a wide receiver that I was more frustrated at on my team because of where I spent, the draft capital in a redraft league versus what I got. And he had boom games, but it was just so inconsistent. I never knew if he was going to cost me my week or win it. So anyway, is there anyone in particular you have problems with or that you want to ask a question? I don't know. Like,
no,
I could see people being upset about Smith being so low, but I don't know.
I would say this. I don't have DK in this tier. I actually have him lower still.
Okay, fair.
In my personal opinion, I do have a question for you. Out of all these people in this tier, these players, who has the highest upside?
Great question.
Out of all these guys, like who can be the top 10 guy for you?
Honestly, dude.
Which is difficult.
I think it's Drake London.
Exactly.
I really do.
I completely
If Drake
agree
London,
with you.
if he got a Kirk Cousins level quarterback,
I completely agree.
I'm not sure there's a ceiling for that player.
It can be through the roof, my guy. Like it is incredible and exciting of where he can go going into this year.
I 100% agree. I'm glad you talked about DK Metcalf because that was one of my biggest sells last year. Mm-hmm. And he was kind of perceived as like this top 12 locked and loaded guy every year.
Yeah.
And I remember you and I were looking at underdog drafts and he was being drafted as like the wide receiver 13.
It was crazy.
And I kept asking like, why is this happening? Because this guy has only finished top 10 once in his career. In the last 3 years now, he has not finished inside the top 20 on a per game basis. Mm-hmm. Last year, the wide receiver 22. The year before, the wide receiver 24. I mean, people are treating DK because he's an alpha and he's a freak athlete like he's a top 12 locked and loaded guy every year. He hasn't been that for a while.
No, not
and
at all.
Anyway, I maybe quarterback play could have helped him for sure, but Yeah, I would say Drake London is the one that has the highest upside. I would probably put like Flowers pretty close.
Okay.
Because it's just the volume is always a concern with him.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen with OBJ when he leaves. Same thing with Rashad Bateman. If I'm not mistaken, he's on his last year of his contract. Zay Flowers could take another step, or they can bring in some more wide receivers, which could be a little bit annoying here.
All right, let's hop into tier 6 here. Jaden Reed, very difficult for me to place. A player I have in my top 24 of my Dynasty rankings, and a player that I really want on my roster moving forward, but hard to place him in tier 5 for me. I don't know why. It just was. Deebo Samuel, Stephon Diggs, some veterans here. George Pickens, who, talk about upside if a quarterback was there. Terry McLaurin, I'm happy to answer any questions about these names. Mike Evans. This is where my tier 6 stands. A lot of vets, and I guess Jaden Reed and Pickens kind of thrown in there. But I would say if there's an obvious buy low for me in this tier, it's Terry McLaurin. Because
with the new quarterback coming in.
Maybe Ben Johnson is the coordinator. The guy who has produced Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta type of outcome for fantasy. But he's getting a quarterback upgrade. He's never had a good quarterback on his team, and new head coach, new OC. He's the most obvious buy low for me of these names. But anyway, any questions, disagreements? I don't know.
No, the one player I do want to speak on is Jaden Reed. I have him in my tier 5. Like, for example, I would switch Jaden Reed and DK Metcalf. Just because of the upside, because of the quarterback play with Jordan Love as well. We've seen a massive uptick in comfortability in this offense with Jordan Love, and the understanding of how they want to run this offense with Jaden Reed as well. Finished as a wide receiver 25 on his rookie year, averaging over 13.5 fantasy points per game. I know.
Oh yeah, dude.
Like,
I love Jaden
and the
Reed.
way he gets utilized is from creativity, jet sweeps, end arounds. They use him in the backfield.
People are calling him a Debo light.
Yeah, exactly, which is really exciting. And the way, once again, with Jordan Love and the way he played, especially in the playoffs, I know he had the one terrible play, which was an interception. But still, overall, my guy was going head-to-head with the 49ers, which is a tough defense on his first year, essentially, as a starter. And he took this team to the playoffs. So I think when you have somebody like that at under center and Jaden Reed, that ceiling can be as high as possible. I won't be surprised if he finishes as a top 12, top 15 wide receiver next year with Jordan Love. So that's probably the only player I would want to talk about in this tier.
Here's where my concern really lied. And I talked about Jaden Reed as a buy low. I don't think people realize how high I had him ranked. I still love this player. I think he's the best complete receiver on the Packers. I really do.
Yeah, I agree.
The more I dive into it, I can't put him in tier 5 because I'm slightly concerned about the pure amount of pass catchers on this offense that get opportunity. We got to keep in mind that Christian Watson, he didn't play most of this year, right? I looked up splits for Jaden Reed with and without Christian Watson. There were nine games where Watson played. In those 9 games, Jaden Reed averaged 11.3 points per game. In the 7 games without Christian Watson, Jaden Reed averaged about 16.5 points per game. The difference between those two guys or those two outcomes on an entire year is vast, is very, very vast. And Luke Musgrave was injured for a time. Tucker Kraft stepped up.
Aaron Jones.
You had Dontavion Wicks, who stepped up and developed a role. Bo Melton, out of nowhere, had week-winning, performances. So I think he's the best player on this team at the wide receiver spot. Watson is the best athlete. I think they want to get him healthy, and they've talked about their entire goal this offseason with him is to figure out why he's getting injured so much and to fix it. But you hear where I'm coming from?
I hear you.
The range of outcome is still slightly in question, although I think he'll be the guy to own in that wide receiver room. The range of outcome is still in question because Musgrave, Watson, Dobbs. I haven't even talked about Dobbs. Dontavion Wicks. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I hear you.
So that's why I couldn't put him in that top tier, but he probably deserves it.
Yeah. I think he could deserve it going into this year. Really quick, somebody I want to brush over and just give some love because I think we were both out on this guy, Mike Evans.
Oh yeah.
Wide receiver 7, incredible year with someone like Baker Mayfield, this is the first time, if I'm not mistaken, Baker Mayfield has produced a top 7 wide receiver in his career.
100%.
And I question, is it because of the offense? Was it because Mike Evans is just better than OBJ and Jarvis Landry was at the time? Is Baker Mayfield just older and better and more wiser?
I think he just found the perfect situation.
Yeah,
and there's a growth to his game.
I would say this: if I'm on a win now team and Baker Mayfield stays on this team gets a 2-year, 3-year contract extension, which I think he does, and Mike Evans gets another, maybe he gets tagged or maybe they give him a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
He is somebody that I would want to try to acquire on a win now team if this is how he's going to be performing on a week-to-week basis, averaging over 16.5 fantasy points per game, which is still pretty decent. If I'm not mistaken, that puts him in the top 15 in fantasy points per game amongst wide receivers, which is still really good, especially at the value that you got him at.
He also tied Tyreek for the most receiving touchdowns in the NFL this year at 13. So a lot of his points came in the end zone, but that's what he is.
Yeah.
He's that guy.
I completely agree.
But Aki, in tier 7 and 8, you and I planned on not going too in depth. We just want to let people see a little further because oftentimes we finish a video and people are like, "What about this guy? What about this guy?" So let's go a little further here. We'll do a Twitter recap of each tier.
Sure.
In tier 7, Davante Adams, who, by the way, finished
on the
as the wide receiver 10. As the wide receiver 10. If you guys don't know, but Aki and I had a bet before the year on our redraft channel. I said that Adams would be top 12. Badaki said he wouldn't be. He finishes as a wide receiver 10. It was really close.
And the last game, I think that touchdown that he had solidified him to be top 10 because a lot of people didn't play on that last week, like if I'm not mistaken. Anyways.
Yeah. So we'll have to figure out when we do that punishment. But I can't even remember what the punishment was. But anyway, he's there. Amari Cooper, Christian Watson, Cooper Kupp, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin in my tier 7. Again, just quick Twitter version questions or comments. What do we got here before we move on to tier 8?
I guess I'll talk about Calvin Ridley. I think a lot of people are disappointed in his performance. Give him another, I would say in a dynasty perspective, he's probably not somebody I want to draft in the top 6 rounds, depending on his landing spot.
Yeah, for sure.
But he can somebody that can be of value once we find, if he goes to the Chiefs, if he goes to the Bills, if he goes to insert elite quarterback with the team, right? Like that can change a lot compared to what he's did in the first year with Trevor Lawrence. So keep in mind with Calvin Ridley.
It's a strong hold, I'd say. A very, very strong hold.
Agreed.
So, yeah, I would agree there. All right, and into tier 8, Hollywood Brown, one of my favorite buys this offseason. We'll talk about that, I guess. Jameson Williams, Josh Downs. Jameson's picking it up. Keenan Allen, Deontay Johnson. This list could go further, but we're going to end it there. Any player you want to talk about?
Yeah, you kind of mentioned him already. Hollywood Brown, one of my favorite buy lows as well. Somebody that can either find a new quarterback or stay with this team if they somehow don't get Martin Harrison Jr. And he's still a really good complementary wide receiver that could be a wide receiver 2, a high-end wide receiver 2, in my opinion, even with the likes of Martin Harrison, Roma Doomsday, and Malik Neighbors on the team. So somebody that I really like personally. And yeah, I think that's about it. Jameson, I don't know if I want to invest in him. It's a little bit difficult for me when it comes down to him.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I think he's really starting to become a very good player. I understand some people's concerns, but I think he's really, really developing into a great player. The volume is really the concern. I guess Josh Downs we should talk about quickly because he kind of popped off with Gardner Minshew and then disappeared. Like, fell off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
You and I's concern, is that proper English?
Yeah,
probably not.
Concern.
Our main concern was not really around this player, his talent, but was more around the quarterback play he would have. And we love Anthony Richardson in fantasy. He's a great fantasy asset. He's a great fantasy quarterback. He's developing into a very good player, but he did not take the strides we wanted him to as a passer this year. In fact, if anything, a long-term shoulder construction isn't going to help. Certainly not going to hurt him. He'll be back 100% as the same player. But what I'm trying to say ultimately is We wanted to see Anthony Richardson have those bad and good games and develop as a passer. We wanted to see him have the Jordan Love type year where, different players, but Jordan Love started the season very inefficient, very low completion percentage, and picked up the game, picked up the offense, ended up being a very efficient player. Anthony Richardson did not have that chance. And, he had under 60% of his passes completed in the 4 games that he played. We wanted to see him take huge strides. So Josh Downs is still a huge question mark, not only because he disappeared with Gardner Minshew, but because Anthony Richardson is his quarterback of the future, and we have no idea if Anthony Richardson can support multiple fantasy assets, let alone one at this point, right? We don't know that. It's a small sample size.
Yeah.
So that's the last thing I'd say on him. And you could put Jahan Dotson in there somewhere, I think.
Yeah.
Jacoby Myers,
Jahan Dotson,
Dobbs, Hopkins. You could put those guys somewhere.
All those guys can be in this tier or maybe even higher if some people like the way they performed. One guy I do want to quickly highlight that's on this list, Jerry Jeudy. I'm still believing him. I'm believing that he lands on a good team with a better quarterback. I don't think it's a talent. I think it's the terrible quarterback play that he's been for essentially his whole career so far. I could be wrong, but I'm going to give him one more year to see if he can do it with a good quarterback. If he's going to go, once again, insert elite quarterback, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. Does he go to a team that has a better quarterback that can distribute the ball than he's had in the last 4 years?
I'm laughing because I just recorded a video that is entitled "It's Over for These Players."
And Jerry Jeudy's on that list, I'm assuming.
And Jerry Jeudy's on the list. You're about to make the graphics for it here after this video. But we're on different pages there. But I could be totally wrong on him.
I just want to see him with a good quarterback. That's all. Let's see what happens. And if not, then I completely agree with you.
That's fair. That's it for today, guys. Do us a favor, drop a like, subscribe if you like Dynasty content. We'll see you soon. All love. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.